Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Sustainable Aviation Futures Latin America webinar, Scaling Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Aviation Decarbonisation in Latin America, where our panel will be exploring the latest policy updates, feedstock landscapes, and pathways to international deployment of SAF currently existing in the Latin America market. Thank you all very much for joining us today. My name is Harry, the content director for this event. Sustainable Aviation Futures hosts a global series of high-level SAF and aviation decarbonisation conferences, bringing together the entire value chain to network, connect, and discuss the capabilities for scaling innovative energy solutions and powering a thriving aviation industry. Over the next 60 minutes, our panel of experts will discuss how Brazil and Latin America's fuel capacity can repurpose infrastructure for SAF production, confidently navigate rising SAF costs, create supply certainty, and assess which technologies and pathways are best placed to scale SAF in the short and medium term in the region. This webinar is being hosted ahead of Sustainable Aviation Futures Latin America, taking place in Sao Paulo from the 2nd to the 4th of March. Today we'll provide a snapshot into some of those topics covered at the event, which will include all of the speakers and companies here today. The 3-day event will feature over 400 senior leaders and industry experts from across the aviation and energy value chain to discuss national landscapes for production in the region and establish the path to meet the industry's ambitious targets, as well as providing a snapshot of the global SAF landscape and innovative technologies present in the region. If you would like to hear more of our upcoming events, as well as gain access to exclusive interviews and articles, be sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, SAF Spotlight. Finally, before I hand over to today's moderator, a couple of bits of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be distributed to you once the webinar finishes. In addition, there is a Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen, so please ask questions that you have in the box, and we will do our best to answer them all at the end of the hour. With that, I am pleased to hand over to today's moderator, Rafaela Gomez at New Gaia Strategies. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Harry, and the Sustainable Aviation Futures for this really nice chat that you put together with all of these experts. I think this is a great preparation for our in-person event in São Paulo on March the 2nd. And I would like to open our discussion here today, talking a little bit about, of course, what you all want to hear, which is SAF, but talking about what is the current scenario in SAF globally. So we know that there is a lot of discussion about mandates and voluntary commitments by airlines and all of that. And I think that the way that we're looking into the future right now is that there is a very likely chance that by 2030, the demand will surpass the supply of SAF. And that is due to a number of reasons. One is that even though there has been a lot of mandates discussion globally and even voluntary commitments by the airlines, and there are a lot of projects currently announced, more than 200 SAF projects globally, we haven't been seeing those projects coming to fruition at the speed that they were supposed to. So the current production in 2024 of SAF globally was just about shy of 1.5 million tons, and that is 0.5% of the global demand for aviation fuel. So that clearly states that we are in the very early stages of this industry. And the reasons for that are of course, even though the fuel is a large part of the carbon emissions for the aviation industry, they represent, I think, more than 50% of the initiatives that can reduce carbon emissions. This industry operates traditionally with very low margins, and the fuel costs actually represent a high amount of those costs. And currently, SAF production is actually 3 times more expensive than the actual aviation fuel. So how can we bridge that gap and all of those challenges? and opportunities as well. And what does this all mean for us in Latin America and specifically in Brazil? So I will start my first question to Euler, and of course ask him to introduce himself and give us a little bit of a view on what he does, and also, Euler, what do you think this all means for Latin America, and how is Brazil specifically preparing for this opportunity and these challenges?
Thank you, Rafael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Euler Lage. I work at the Presidential Republic of Brazil with the monitoring of renewable fuels projects. And for us, for Brazil, SAF is not only a new market or new fuel, but it's mainly a vector to green new industrialization. We can use this opportunity to create jobs, to bring more health to Brazil. And now we are moving from discussion to implementation of SAF. And for this, we need, first of all, a consistent regulatory framework. And we are doing this. With the approval of the Fuel of the Future law, SAF is now encouraged in a long-term legal framework. It's not only a pilot initiative. And this law establishes a mandatory SAF blending trajectory, starting the next year, beginning at 1%, and gradually increasing to 10% by 2037. And this provides demand certainty, one of the critical problems or challenges that we can fight, because we have an emerging market. And so, again, we have the question of the challenge of chicken egg. I think there is a problem with my microphone. I read some, no, it's okay.
Oh, I can hear you quite well, Euler. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now with this mandate, we send a signal very clear and durable. It's this Brazil commitments doesn't depend on the government in place. And another very important point to Brazil and also the Latin America is that we have a large experience using renewable fuels. Brazil, since the 70s, is using ethanol as a car fuel, and we are using for a long time as well biodiesel in our trucks. So we have the experience, we have the knowledge, and we can use this to construct this new market. But, and we have as well a large amount of different feedstocks that we can use to produce SAF for many different pathways. And another really important point is policy integration. With this experience and all this knowledge that we have about renewable fuels, we can put together our framework from the other renewable fuels like ethanol with the SAF. For example, we have the RenovaBio, a really important program that from which we can learn about traceability. Traceability is a critical point in SAF, as we know. And we know we have some problems as well with or challenges, better than problems, with the financing of these projects. because imagine we have this problem of supply and demand. How we can supply if we don't have demand? How we can demand if we don't have supply? So the government have a really important role in this question, providing the initial conditions to start to reach the FAT point of all the projects. And so these questions are not only about Brazil, but I think that other big countries of Latin America have the same challenges and same conditions. So now we have we are doing the connection between the market, the different government branch, and the academy to put this on road. So thank you, Rafael, and I will wait for your contributions.
Thank you so much, Elder. I think you touched upon very important points, which is the consistent regulatory framework. That is a very important point to actually drive demand. And you talked also about demand certainty, which I think is, I always like to start with demand. So I think that we need to have the demand in order to make sure that everything else that we are discussing here can go through. So, and I also really liked what you said about the experience that we already have with biofuels, specifically ethanol and biodiesel, but also the integration between the regulations. So now I'm actually going to use that hook to go to Ricardo and ask him to talk a little bit more in detail about how is the Pro-QAV regulation being implemented in your view, and what are also the next steps for the discussions regarding CORSIA and all of those legislations that are being put through? And also, if you can, I really like the point about integration between the legislations, if you can touch about the future fuels law and all the other regulation that we already have. I'm sorry to our Latin American friends for the Brazilian focus, but Ricardo works in ANAC and I think his experience is in Brazil. But feel free to expand if you want to, I think especially with the CORSIA discussions on a more regional analysis. Okay, so Ricardo, so let's dive into that.
Thanks, Rafael. And hello, everyone. I wish we had many more hours to discuss this, and I'm looking forward to the event in São Paulo because we have a lot to talk about what we saw evolving over the last year since we had the last session in São Paulo. So starting on the policy side, picking up on some points that Euler already mentioned. So we have our Fuels of the Future law that was approved back in 2024. It has more than 1 year now, right? And I'm very happy that we had a smart choice of the metrics of that policy. It's the emissions reduction that we used for that. Something very new in the world. I'm not aware of anyone else using that as the metric for the mandate, and that brought us many good fruits from that. And now we are in the process of finalizing the decree. The Ministry of Mines and Energy put forward for public consultation last December this document, the decree for the implementation of the law. And now we are helping them in revising what the public consultation brought. And in that proposal, you might have seen that we included some things that are new to this market as well, apart from the metrics that we use in the law. We also included there book and claim. I'm again not aware of anyone else using book and claim as the chain of custody for SAF implementation or even other fuels in the world. And this has been always something that everybody asked for. Everybody said, that's a good idea. And we didn't see anybody using. So we said, let's go forward, right? Let's try that. And now it seems like it's going to work. We have the provisions on the decree that are proposed now. And we are hoping that this will work very well and disconnect this physical product from the environmental attribute to the main point that we always have in the discussion. It's the cost of SAF. You said at the beginning, we are turning around 3 times the cost of the jet fuel, the conventional jet fuel, and we need to bring that down. If we want to scale up this price has to go down. Otherwise, airlines won't buy that in large scale. That's something, a fact that we cannot ignore. So in this degree, again, many things have been put there so we can bring this cost to the lowest level possible and create this market that will produce SAF in the specific case for Brazil. But we believe it's a good business case that we can export, if I might say that, for other places as well. We include some safeguards that as well there. For example, every SAF produced or commercialized in Brazil has to be certified for sustainability. So we cannot commercialize anything that is not certified. That gives some assurance of the high environmental integrity that we want from our SAF. We want the world to see this as a good product, something that can bring that environmental benefit to them. And then this is more related to feedstock, and I can talk a little bit on the feedstock side as well. I'm making this connection with the decree and the law. The first plant that we have in Brazil that will be producing SAF is from Petrobras. They announced last October, November, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll assume that. But as a direct consequence of this choice of the metrics, they looked into some residual feedstocks to produce their SAF. They're using technical corn oil, so a residue that has a very low carbon footprint, and they're producing from that. And if I'm not mistaken, the CI that they get is about 10 grams of CO2 per megajoule, compared to 89 from fossil fuel, right? So it's almost 90% emissions reduction. That's great achievement, right? A direct effect of a good choice of public policy that was made. In relation to that as well, we have we heard news from other companies that are certifying feedstocks. Bunge, for example, they certified soybean under a specific procedure in CORSIA. That's the low look risk practice that gives an I look value of 0 for this feedstock. That's a great achievement as well. We already had other companies in Brazil that produce feedstocks under the same procedure, the low look risk practice. Some for sugarcane, others for second crop corn. So we are developing this market of feedstocks that actually have added value. So they have something better than the traditional feedstocks that we have. And in line with that, we also had for CSI side, last July, ICA recognized the second crop corn produced in Brazil as something that has lower impact compared to traditional corn, so first crop corn. And this CI from this iLook factor is basically a third of the global one. So it's a great achievement as well, right? Also related to ICA, some other feedstocks are constantly being added to lists there, and we have something specific from Brazil as well. Some residues is from the sugarcane industry, vinasse and filter cake. They have been added there. So this means that these feedstocks, if used for SAF production, they have no emissions associated with them up to the collection point. So only from the collection point onwards. And this brings again the CI down, and again it's a good feedstock to work with. And this is something that I'm saying for Brazil, but this is something that Latin America can actually use. It's not only Brazil that produces second crop corn. Paraguay, Argentina has 2 soybean crops per year. So the entire region can do this. We only need to get organized and go there to ICAO and make this pledge. So that our region can actually show that they can do better, right? We can do better. We have renewable electricity here more than any place in the world. Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina as well. So we have the conditions here to produce SAF in a very sustainable and with very manner and with a very low CI. So I'll stop here.
Ricardo, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. Yeah. You mentioned book and claim, and I'm a huge fan of book and claim because it allows, first, I think the flexibility of exporting the the decarbonization without having to export the products. And this for me applies to everything from fertilizers. Brazil is a huge importer to, and for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to push fuels from around the world if you can just shift the attributes. So my question is actually, since the regulation, the way it's being implemented is a decarbonization rule for SAF, then as far as I understand, this integrates directly with the regulated carbon markets, right, in Brazil, because you are able to have an actual measurement for each project of how much is being decarbonized, and those credits can enter the regulated market and account not only for the company's own metrics, but also in the future could be exported. What is your review on that?
So obviously for the decree, it only talks about the domestic market in the context of the pro-bio QAV. So for the compliance with the obligations from the aircraft operators, they will use what we are calling SAF, so sustainability certifications for SAF, certificates for SAF. And this is on the context of the pro-bio QAV. Obviously, Brazil has a lot of potential to export this, and for that we need to have this recognized worldwide or with bilateral agreements. So what I expect is that our ministries and everybody else will get engaged in this, try to work on bilateral agreements that we can export these credits, I won't say credits, certificates elsewhere, and then get an even larger market for the certificates. And well, that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
No, perfect. And I think we do have a huge opportunity because we are also on the other side implementing the regulation for carbon markets in Brazil. So I think that having that integration, regulatory integration, as Euler mentioned, is really important. I really appreciate your comments on the indirect land use and the feedstocks, Ricardo. I think this is something that it's on top of everyone's mind. And if we think about Latin America as a whole, we do have, I would say, a great advantage globally in terms of feedstock availability. And I would also add a very advanced agricultural sector, the likes of which I don't see anywhere else in the world. So I think that being able to I would say, be in these discussions about the standards and the certifications, and being able to explain to people and teach that we have second harvest corn or other things that do not impact indirect land use is very important, because I think that up until now we stood in the back seat of the discussions on the global standards. And I think that all that you mentioned for me is an advance in that now we are sitting at the table and we are showing the world that we do have everything here, and there is a lot of feedstocks. I think that people in the comment mentioned several other more that we do have or have the ability to grow here that don't have either a land impact and they have in fact a very low CI when everything is taken into account. So with all that, I want to pass on to Gonçalo, because I think that we managed to have a good view on the demand and the regulation and everything that's being done on that side. But Gonçalo, how does this all connect with the airlines and what you're seeing in Latin America in terms of actual implementation of all of this into the day-to-day of the aviation sector?
Hello, Rafael. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the question. So I'll start maybe following up on what Dupont mentioned on regulation and start by that point. I mean, regulation is a key pillar for the SAF strategy of Airbus. So the way we see it is that any development and any strong placement for the countries to have SAF needs to start with regulation. So without regulation, there's too much questions, there's too much uncertainty, and we all know that SAF is not an easy or cheap investment. so needs to have long term. And we firmly believe that regulation can be one of the main ways to reinforce that certainty for investors. So we currently support regulation done in the right way and in the right order. And maybe that's following on what Dupont mentioned on Brazil. He brought a lot of innovative ways of doing regulation. So the focus on greenhouse gas, first of all, meaning that not all the liters of SAF are the same. So there are different SAFs with different CI levels. So that is very important and is very well differentiated in the Brazilian decree that has been recently discussed. And also as well on the Brazil decree is the adoption of the book and claim system as part of the regulation. And for us, it is quite positive as well. So I think book and claim has been discussed for many years, but mostly and always on a voluntary market. Yeah. And this, of course, is great. It was a first step, but this needs further development because if we all just are based on voluntary market, I don't believe personally that we'll reach the targets that we need by 2050. So saying that, Brazil adopted in a very nice way the book and claim system that brings flexibility for the producers, for the airlines as well. And hopefully it can also have an impact on the price, what is always a pain point when we talk about SAF. So on the regulation side, let's see how the final document will turn out. But so far, a very good step forward from Brazil. And a quick mention to the other countries as well. So we know Brazil in the Latin American Caribbean region is more advanced, also because the biggest market. But we see other countries with potential. So last year, Airbus has partnership with ICAO. We did 3 SAF studies. So we did one in Peru, we did one in Argentina, and also in Panama. And very soon we'll start the one in Mexico, also with the partnership of an airline, in this case, Polaris. So this is great as well. We look into feedstocks. We look at potential new feedstocks. And Latin America is a diverse region, very dependent on agriculture, what means that there's a lot of residual agriculture as well. From that's what we need to explore. It's the opportunities for the region and where it can be differentiated from the others. So then I'll say going back to the book and claim, and this, I think it really supports the 3 pillars of Airbus. So really the regulation, it supports the supply, and also in the end also helps the demand. So because it eases the part of the logistics. So supporting the 3 parts, Airbus has been supporting quite a lot on book and claim. So last year we did a couple of workshops. Late December, together with RSB, we published an application study on book and claim. It's publicly available online, so feel free to reach out to me or to RSB, but you can easily find it on the internet, on LinkedIn. So have a quick read at the study, and it shows the potential of book and claim, what are the benefits of it, and the benefits of having a good system of book and claim, meaning that when you buy SAF, you buy a sustainable product that has been certified, it has everything in place for you. So it kind of eases all the audits and all the part of that procurement needs to do when you need fuel. So have a look at that study from RSB. It has been quite good. And I think the last point maybe I want to mention would be on Brazil, on ethanol, on biodiesel as well. So Brazil has a long history of not just biodiesel and ethanol, but renewable energies in general. So it has a very clean electric grid. So this is where we definitely should focus on. And the way I see it is, especially on the alcohol to jet route, and I don't want to start into pathway discussions here, but Brazil, from my point of view, is the right place for it to work. So because it already has all the logistics in place, it already has the experience, the knowledge, even some similar regulations. So why not a bigger investment and a bigger focus on alcohol to jet? Because my view is, if it will not work in Brazil, it will not work anywhere. So definitely a good focus there. And From our side in Airbus, we keep supporting projects. We're happy to speak with suppliers. Of course, we definitely speak with our big partners of the airlines. And where I would like to mention a last word, I mean, SAF has a problem with the price, and that's an issue. And we know the airlines, they are not against sustainability for sure, but it's tough for them to just swallow SAF without any impact on their financials, on the price for tickets, and in the end, on any potential price increase for customers. So we all need to be partners into this. We all need to be working together, talking to each other, and see what next steps we can do. And so, yeah, happy to take any questions, and I'll be as well in the conference in March together with some other colleagues from Airbus. So happy to reach out to all of you. Thank you, Rafaela.
Thank you, Gonzalo. I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
When you look into these projects in Peru, Argentina, Panama, and Mexico, what are the main things what are you looking for, and what are the hurdles also
Yep.
So what is important and
Yep.
what is a problem?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, the studies have not been published yet, so we'll see the results very soon. But I think as a first milestone was the fact that we started talking about SAF, and some of these countries where Airbus has been, different from Brazil, I would say, but some of them, they were not so mature in terms of SAF. And it's bringing everyone together into these, and this panel today is a perfect example of that. So we do need the private sector, but we also need, public and governmental entities into the discussion. And it's not just, someone focused on sustainability. We need finance people. We need development people. We need industry people from the governments as well to all reach out and talk together. So these are my main milestone. I think these ACT SAF studies really enable that. So we put everyone in a room for 1 or 2 days. For some people, it was the first time they were hearing about SAF. Some others have been trying to explore opportunities or new business into this. So this has been the first milestone that we reach out. And really, hopefully, I mean, when we have the final results for the studies for these countries, we'll for sure make it public. And we are doing it together with ICAO, so it will be available for everyone. So hopefully we'll see some good news on the feedstocks for these countries.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo. And I think that is actually the perfect segue to talk to Pablo, because I think we covered most of the demand, regulation, the airlines' ambitions and difficulties. But I think, Pablo, everything the plants need to be constructed, right? The projects need to, as we love to say, still on the ground. So in your view, what are the main difficulties and challenges for this construction, the effective construction of the projects? If you could also talk a little bit about the routes. We know that HAFA is the cheapest one in today, but it also has this limitation of supply. And as Gonzalo and other folks here already brought, we do have a lot of ethanol production in Brazil and growing, especially with the second harvest corn. How does this all connect, we see, with the actual implementation of these projects, Pablo?
Thank you, Rafaela. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Well, working for an EPC company as Techint give us like the broad idea of how difficult it is to implement or put all this demand in place, no? So in order to be able to have this, not only demand is needed, but also we need to be able to actually do the construction and do the integration of the facilities to be able to produce this SAF, no? So let me start a little bit with the industrial readiness of Latin America as a general thing, and afterwards we can go technical pathway by technical pathway. So we all are here thinking that Latin America is one of the most promising regions for SAF, no? That's why That's why we think this can happen, and that's why some mandates are starting to grow, specifically in Brazil. No, so Latin America in general has a very strong industrial infrastructure, very strong oil and gas and refinery capacity, mainly in Brazil, in Argentina, also in Colombia, with a lot of hydrotreatment units. This is very important for the HEFA pathway, technology pathway. No. Also, these countries have a very developed midstream and pipelines infrastructure. So this could help the very first steps of SAF, that is going to be through HEFA, for the early demand. No, Latin America also have a very important feedstock availability. In Brazil, the vegetable oil, tallow, for HEFA. As Euler mentioned, ethanol has been an old industry in Brazil from the early 70s. So all the industry, it is already developed in Brazil. In Argentina and Colombia, vegetable oil, soybean oil is also very important. And for future developments for power to liquids, I think that Chile and Uruguay can be very strong because they have very strong fundamentals for renewable energy, and specifically in Uruguay, a lot of biogenic CO2. So having this industrial and feedstock supply chains already developed will make things more easy, no, for Latin America. Having said that, there are several challenges to be able to put these projects in place, let's say. Of course, we started with demand because that is what we need. We need regulatory certainty so that demand grows. But there are a lot of challenges in making this happening, no? So we understand that the size of the proposed projects are several times the capacity of the actual project license and in actual operation. So that could be a sort of problem in liability, in guarantees. Many of these projects are going to be the first of its kind, not because of the technology, but because of the size. So guaranteeing the performance of these facilities, it's a big challenge, no? Also, it is another challenge, the scalability of the industries in between the standards of oil and gas, no, and the standards of the actual industry where these technologies are actually operating differ a little bit. So we need to level that as well, no? So structuring contracts with performance guarantees in between technology licensors, construction companies, and operators is also going to be a challenge, no? And of course, another challenge, it is in Latin America as a general, the slow permitting for this type of projects. Sometimes it's not easy. We are seeing some project cancellations in Chile for renewable e-fuels, and also in Paraguay and Uruguay. So it is not easy also to make this permitting move through, no? So if I have some more time, I would like to go to talk about the readiness, because it is the readiness as Latin America as a whole. We have talked about it, but of course, there's a particular readiness for each particular SAF production pathway, no? So I don't want to go into details. We all know that there are two main big splits here in the pathways. We do have bio-SAF, no, with biomass feedstocks, but we can have e-SAF in the future going from power to liquids, no? So we know that HEFA is the more mature and easy to integrate technology. We know that the early gallons are going to come through this technology because it will allow lowest capex for our projects. and being able to co-process in existing facilities will allow the first SAF gallons to get into the market with easy business case, let's say, no? The problem here is that it is very dependent of the feedstock, and the feedstocks change. So this is not going to be enough for the future demands for SAF, no? Other technologies, as Gonzalo mentioned, I think Gonzalo and Ricardo also mentioned the alcohol-to-jet technology. I do really think that if alcohol-to-jet technology is going to happen, it's going to happen in Brazil. It has one of the most developed industries in ethanol, no, in alcohol. So although this technology is not as mature as the HEFA, I think that it could be an intermediate path in between HEFA and power-to-liquid technologies. But of course, they have higher capex and some technical problems as very high catalytic degradation. Moving forward to the future, I'm thinking how, let's say, SAF is going to first go through HEFA, alcohol-to-jet, hopefully through gasification, Fischer-Tropsch, and finally with power-to-liquids with a Fischer-Tropsch unit. I think that gasification, Fischer-Tropsch could be also another opportunity, a pathway technology. It is not that ready, but the good thing is very high-level scalable. And it gives you feedstock flexibility because you can burn a lot of biomass, even adding coal or natural gas. And it's also very versatile with the products you're able to get, no? But of course, this means higher capex. So let's say we need to make sure that SAF start coming from the easiest pathways and transiting all the more difficult pathways, but there's place for every pathway to move forward. And finally, the power-to-liquid, of course, here the pro is that you're not going to have dependence on biomass, no, because you will have an abundant feedstock potentially from renewable energy and CO2 capture. But of course, it is one of the most unmature technology and one of the with the highest capex, no, for sure. And the cons of this type of technologies that requires massive electrical requirements, and that could be a problem, although renewable power and energy, it is very developed in Latin America. Now that power is starting to be perhaps getting more expensive due to the need of power for data centers. So let's say we do really need more certainty, as Gonzalo said, in order to be able to make all these business case close and be able to develop stuff, no?
Thank you, Pablo. I think that was a very comprehensive overview of the possible routes and of the challenges of actually implementing these projects. I think that in regards to alcohol-to-jet, Brazil is the second largest ethanol producer in the world, and we do have a competitive advantage when we look at the first largest producer, which is the United States, because of our CI, both in the sugarcane ethanol and in corn ethanol. We do have a much lower CI, and that actually allows us to meet several requirements that the American ethanol does not. So I think that we do have, just thinking about what you said, an enormous advantage in Brazil, both for the present and future when we look in terms of technology scale up. And we do have, I think, advantages currently in the HEFA routes in terms of feedstocks in Latin America. We do have very strong advantages in terms of alcohol to jet. And even if we look into power to liquids, this is what you mentioned. Brazil has, and Latin America in general, this possibility to produce very low cost electricity. And of course, everything will have to be, I think, consolidated in terms of additional demands that might be coming up, such as data centers. But I think that won't change the fact that we are the region that can scale this more. So I do have, before we move into Q&A, I do have one question to Euler just on this. As you mentioned, Pablo, all of these new projects are going to be one-of-a-kind projects. And we're talking about billions of reais of investment per project. So this is not an easy task. And I know that, for instance, BNDES and FINEP, in July last year, they issued a public call for sustainable aviation fuels and shipping projects. So, Ele, how do you see the support in terms of financing from the governments to these type of initiatives? Because there is still a lot of risk and uncertainty, and the investments are quite large.
Yes, this is a great challenge because it's an emerging market. The costs are really high, like you said, billions of dollars. And it's the kind of chicken-egg challenge. But we think that the government has a role very important to de-risking this kind of investment. So the governments like in Brazil, the BNDES and FINEP did this, it's called last year, and there are some others ideas we can implement during this next years. And the idea is to de-risk the investment, to possibility the private investors can invest as well, because the government cannot take the place of the private investor. We can just start the risk, the investment, and possibly the growth of this new market. I think this is the really important thing. And there is another question, if you let me. You talk about the book and claim. And for Brazil, for instance, it's really important because it makes no sense, for example, to transport SAF from São Paulo to the Amazon region burning diesel, or we sell SAF from Latin America to Singapore, to China, to Thailand, burning fossils at the oceans. So the book and claim is fundamental for us to have a really sustainable chain, not only a sustainable renewable fuel, but a sustainable market.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I would like to go through some of the questions that we have from the audience here. I think the first one is directed at Gonçalo. I think it's a very good question, but I think all of you might answer if you want to. It is a question on, is there a preferred feedstock in terms of markets and regulations? And actually, João Uncuri was the one making this question. And he said, I know that there is a resistance to use China's UCO-based SAF. So this would be a production route to avoid. What do you think? What are the opportunities here? And if there are any specific routes that the investor should avoid?
Thank you, Phil. And I can start with the question, but anyone feel free to jump in, of course. I mean, from an Airbus perspective, and I think we follow the views of Corsia and all that. And I always mention that, the first word of SAF is sustainability. And that's what matters. So it's being sustainable. So as long as it's sustainable in terms of water, social development, economic development, all of that. So it's a long list, and we have a lot of entities that are able to audit and give you that stamp of being sustainable. So as long as it's sustainable, I think the feedstock doesn't really matter. What matters is to be sustainable, and also it does not matter if it comes from Brazil, from China, or any other place in the world. What matters is to be sustainable, and we have a very pragmatic approach. That's why we work with other organizations like RSV, but many other in the world have that. But our focus is to be sustainable, and I know I share the word of the airlines as well. So the airlines don't want to be blamed, in 10, 20 years that, okay, yeah, you said you were sustainable, but actually you were not. So everyone wants to make sure. We know this makes the process a bit heavy and a bit bureaucratic, and that's why, and the DuPont knows this much better than me, that's why it takes so long, the discussions in the groups of CAEP and all that. But if you want to be sure of sustainability, that's the path we need to go.
Perfect. I think that, Gonzalo, you didn't give an answer, but that was on purpose, because I really like what you said, that we should be feedstock agnostic. At the end of the day, is what you're saying. If the sustainability criteria is met, then that is, and of course you're going to look into other things such as cost and potential, but that's what we should be looking at, and not a preferred feedstock route. I think a lot of what we've seen in the past years with other biofuels is that is not the way to go, because then you're just creating limitations for technologies and other things that are not in the best interest of decarbonization and the industry, I think. So I appreciate it. Ricardo, do you want to add something to that specific question?
No, thanks. I believe Gonzalo and you made a good job there. Thank you.
Nobody wants to talk about corn ethanol from the US. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Euler.
It's just about the used cooked oil. In a particular case of Brazil, the importation of this oil is forbidden. But we are trying to liberate the importation for some special case, like the production of SAF. So I think in the next month it will be a good news. It's but only for a certain period of time, not forever, and then the amount as well will be controlled.
I think that's a very important point, Elia. So that is definitely a feedstock that will have limitations in the future, and I think it's again due to not to a certain point of view, but to actual physical limitations. You can only produce a certain amount of used cooking oil without starting to incentivize certain conducts that are not the best for the world. So I do have a couple of more questions here in the chat. I think there was a question that I liked, which was about which region in Brazil there is any region state specifically in potential in the investment horizon. And I think, Ricardo, you answered privately. Maybe you want to give a broader answer to the public here.
Yeah, a second. So the question is, do we have a region or state specifically with potential in Brazil? SAF can be made basically from anything, and Pablo even mentioned the PTL, right? So from nothing, from air and electricity, right? So we can do from basically anything. We have many feedstocks that we can produce SAF from, and each region has potential for different feedstocks. We have some regions that are more propense for sugarcane and its residues, others for soybean and residues. Again, we have a lot of main products, we have a lot of residues, we have a lot of potential anywhere. So there's nothing that we can point out. We should be looking only at this or only at those. We have technology for basically everything. I believe it was mentioned before that we still have to develop more the ATJ. We only have one plant at commercial scale nowadays in the world, but we have the technology. We have to invest on that. And again, the answer there was reinforcing the book and claim, right? In Brazil, not for the ProBio QAV, we have the book and claim. So if you produce SAF anywhere in the country, you can claim that environmental attribute by any airplane operator that is not necessarily connected to the physical supply. So you can produce SAF in, I don't know, Rio Grande do Norte, and then you deliver it to Natal Airport, and an airplane operator that never flies to there can claim the environmental attribute. So that's an amazing thing that we can have now. So wherever you have this potential that is identified, and you have the financing and all the conditions for the business case to work, you don't need to care much about where you're going to deliver it anymore. You can deliver it to the nearest airport, and that's something very, very, very good from my view. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to maybe wrap up the other questions here. There was a question about where can you find the SAF projections and all of those things. I think there are several public options that you can look into. Brazil APA recently made a really nice study about SAF demand projections and all the implications in Brazil. You can reach to IRENA or IEA, or even RSB, as Gonzalo mentioned, produces a lot of material on that. McKinsey also has a lot of public material on that. So there are several places where you can check. In terms of SAF demand for the next years, it's really hard to predict because you have different layers of possible demand. One is the actual mandate demand. So if we look only at the mandate demand, we are talking about a target demand of 4.5 million tons of SAF in 2030. But if we add the mandate demand and the target demand, we are looking at something around 60 million tons. So if you add the voluntary demand, you can go up to 20 million tons. So it's really variable. It will depend on how these mandates are going to be implemented and how the airline companies and consumers mainly will respond to this. And I think that it will also depend on if we do have supply solutions, because if there is no supply, then you can have all the demand in the world and it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to open just for one last comment, or if someone wants to conclude a thought or something, and then I'm going to pass to Harry. No? So I would like to thank you all for the participation. It was a pleasure being here, and I learned a lot today. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time. And Harry, I'm passing on to you to finalize the event.
Thank you very much, everybody. And Rafaela, thank you very much for the fantastic moderation, a great discussion and plenty to learn, and great to see so many conversations in the webinar chat as well. I hope it's been fruitful for you all as well. As you said, that concludes this webinar. This has been held ahead of Sustainable Aviation Futures Latin America in Sao Paulo from the 2nd to the 4th of March. So very much hope that we see you all there. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day and see you very shortly. Thank you very much.